please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Good morning. Welcome to Morning Call. Infi has a new head and we have a new host for Bazaar. Guess what? Who's back? Come on, let the mystery be out.
Oh, yes,
Sonia is back.
Thank you, Latha. That's so sweet.
Sonia is back and
Hi,
she
Sonia.
now has a 6-month-old little one called Kabir. Almost 6 months. Okay.
5.5
5.5.
Yes, 5.5-month old.
So how's motherhood, Sonia?
Well, it's great, right? I mean, it's amazing. It feels so strange to leave a baby and come back to work. But when you know you have a family like CNBC TV-18, then it's not so bad.
Changing diapers? Is it your
I
responsibility?
am, but I'm waiting for the day my husband starts changing diapers. I think that will be the day.
If you're out for about few hours, then maybe he will.
But you know what, Latha? I mean, for at least for me and for our viewers, I just hope I don't start reciting nursery rhymes instead of talking stock. I hope they excuse me because it's a force of habit. But yeah, the markets have been doing pretty well.
I don't think you should subject him to nursery rhymes just yet. Okay, yeah. Well, we have to speak about markets. Actually, there's so much that's positive today.
So much,
Maybe you're the good luck charm, Sonia, because today we are starting with a lot of good news. We didn't have a very good week last week as far as the indices were concerned. The Nifty, which we thought would touch 10,500, actually came down all the way to 10,100. But today we have some very good cues for some marquee stocks, or at least investor favorites, Infosys. After this bitter acrimony and the long battle, there is someone whose pedigree is extremely impressive and seems to come with a lot of backing of the board and the founders. Of course, we will find out, but this will be very positive for Infi. The second big news, of course, is Biocon, that big Trastuzumab drug. All of us have learned to even pronounce it. It has been in our lingo for so long. It's a cancer drug, and that's getting US FDA nod is, again, a very big positive. So, and of course, the Senate passed the tax bill. So, although Asia is kind of struggling, the US Dow futures are up 200 points.
Yeah.
So, we have a lot of positives going, FI buying. I'm not very sure the auto sales were very good. They look good because obviously November of 2016 was terrible. But that apart, I think there are enough positives for the market to stop sulking, I think. So you are a good luck charm.
I hope so. I hope so. I want to talk in greater detail about the tax cut bill because that's a huge overhaul. But before that, Anuj, what about the markets? You know, I thought you would start off by taking that. So I was just hoping Arsenal would win this time around, but luck was not in my favor. Nevertheless, tell me about the markets.
Yeah, you know, final score matters, Sonia. I didn't want to take it up because it's the first day, so I think we'll have enough days to talk about Arsenal. I don't see that team going anywhere. But you know what? By the way, the whole world is talking about Bitcoin and we're talking about Biocon, which is very interesting. You know, you type Biocon and people think you're talking about Bitcoin. But anyway, you know, I think there are two important bull market theories that will be tested this week. For starters, I think while I take Latha's point that cues look positive, I won't be surprised if we see red on the screen because the first uptick on these days is normally sold into because the near-term texture has become weak. So the near-term texture is sell on rally. So the first bounce may be sold into, but two important theories will be tested. First theory is that corrections normally end with double bottom. 15th November low was 10,094 and close was 10,118. We are there. Right now we are almost there. So if a place is there for the market to bounce, this is it. And the second theory is that if the first day low of a series is preserved the next week, Friday was the first day of new series, then a big rally is, you know, there after that. And I think that played out really in October series, 9,700 where the double bottom got tested twice. And from 9,700, the market had a rally to 10,300 in a single series. So I think both these theories will be tested. For me, the clincher on Friday was the huge shorts from FIIs in the F&O space. They added 56,000 long puts and 49,000 short calls. Now, if these shorts don't get follow through, then of course, you know, there will be huge bout of short covering. But if these shorts get follow through and the Nifty breaks 10,000, then the first correction of 200-day moving average is possible. But that's not my base case. My base case is that the market maybe makes a sort of a double bottom and moves on. Well, as I've been talking about last 2 weeks now, the Gujarat election outcome is the next big event to track. And I think the nervousness about our market underperforming is purely on account of that. let's see if that can actually work in market's favor at some point.
Oh yes, in fact, big month, right? Not just the Gujarat outcome, you have the RBI policy, the FOMC meeting, so lots of stuff to talk about. On that note, let's kickstart the show and tell you what our wise experts have to say as we head into trade this morning. Timothy Moore of Goldman Sachs, first up, he says that they stay overweight on India with a Nifty target of 11,600 by December 2018. He says they enter 2018 favouring markets and sectors with stronger growth, notably China, India, Korea, technology, materials and insurance. All eyes are on the RBI policy this week and they expect the RBI to stay on hold.
All right, money market views now. Pravit Brahmvatta Veracity says ahead of RBI's monetary policy announcement, which is lined up on December 6th, the rupee will be volatile. Trading range for the spot USD INR should be between 64.80 and 64.20. But, well, my own sense is that the rupee is going to keep its eye focused more on the dollar index.
And Jim Magnolia of Edelweiss says the bond markets are expected to remain under pressure today given the elevated crude prices and persistent domestic concerns. He expects the 10-year benchmark to trade in a range of 7.04 to 7.09% today.
Of course, the big global cue this morning, and the Dow futures are up 220 points, is the passing of the Republican tax bill by Senate. It was a close vote, 51-49. Jeff Lewis, global strategist, Capital Markets Group of Manulife Asset Management, is with us now. Jeff, good morning. So, you know, the Dow futures are indicating a big uptick, but we're not seeing any of that play out in Asia. Are we likely to go through a period of big developed market outperformance, big US market outperformance compared to the emerging markets?
Well, we saw a bit of that in that developed markets were in the lead in November, and some emerging markets were down, particularly in Latin America. I think US reflation is good for the global economy, but it's obviously its positive effects are concentrated on U.S. stocks. I think analysts are looking for the S&P 500 earnings to receive somewhere between a 7 and 10% boost. So it's more positive, obviously, for the U.S. stock market.
Yeah, but good morning, Jeff. The real problem for Asia appears to be, you know, for the past few weeks, Asia has been underperforming. India has been underperforming. And now with the passage of the Senate bill, will there be, as my colleague asked you, you know, a flow of funds, a greater share of funds going to developed markets?
Well, I think that's very short term. That's difficult to say. What we've seen is that the flows have continued in October and November to the emerging markets, even though the markets have underperformed a bit. I think the passing of the tax bill is a positive. It's going to add a little bit, although most economists don't think very much. The tax multiplier is quite low, so maybe it'll add 0.3, 0.4% to U.S. GDP growth in 2018. I don't see this as a significant negative for the emerging markets. So the emerging markets were correcting a bit anyway. There's some profit-taking going on, I think, particularly in the Asian technology names. But I think that's to be expected after such an incredible year.
But what about India itself? To some extent, India underperformed even Asian markets, even emerging markets.
Well, that's right. There have been some concerns over higher oil prices. That tends to impact India a bit more than the other emerging markets. We think the oil price is simply moving into a somewhat higher trading range, so I don't think that's a big fundamental change there. And of course, there's been some hiccups following the introduction of the goods and services tax. So again, that's just pretty much short term. So we're not really thinking that there's been a significant deterioration in the fundamentals for India.
So you did speak about the shorter term, Jeff, but what about the slightly medium term? I mean, this has been one of the best years for emerging markets since 2010. Do you think that could continue in 2018 as well? And what would the pecking order be?
Well, yes, we are positive on the emerging markets. They've been out of favor for a long time following the collapse in commodity prices and the global slowdown that began in mid-2014 and lasted through to early 2016. So they've completed a basing formation, and valuations are better relative value. So we think the emerging markets will do reasonably well, although nothing like as large a return as you've seen in absolute terms this year. Pecking order, we would still prefer the Asian economies to the commodity exporters of Latin America. And in terms of Asia, our preferences are Northeast Asia, China, Korea, Taiwan. And in Southeast Asia, we like Indonesia and the Philippines.
All right. Jeff, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. At least for the near term, it's quite possible that we are going to see a preference for developed markets. We have seen that in the past couple of weeks. So let's wait and see. In any case, after a bit of a gap, we did see a positive FII number on Friday. So this is still an opinion which we have to wait to see. Okay, well, now let's come to the big story of the morning. The appointment at Infosys of a new CEO and MD, Salil Parekh, the former Capgemini executive, will face key challenges, of course, reviving growth, forging peace between founders and the board, and as well hand-holding the existing top management, which is getting used to outsiders as head. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, the independent director at Infosys, is joining us to discuss how this appointment came to be. Good morning, Kiran. Well, first, congratulations, but I'm going to ask you first about the role in Infosys and then come to Biocon's superb victory. But in Infosys itself, how many contenders were there? If you can give us an idea as to how many candidates and why Mr. Parekh scored.
Canvas of approximately 30 potential candidates.
Okay.
And we used a set of metrics and filters to arrive at a short list.
Okay.
And, once we arrived at a short list, which was approximately 10 candidates, the NRC actually went through a very rigorous process of interviewing the shortlisted candidates, from which we finally came to a final list of candidates, and there Salil was one of them. And we basically believe that he was a very holistically capable leader with the kind of attributes that we were looking for in terms of experience, in terms of the market understanding, the strategic, capabilities of in terms of thinking about the future, and of course, the cultural understanding of the work ethos in India.
Sure. Good morning. Two questions. A, has Mr. Parekh met Mr. Murthy? And secondly, last time when Vishal Sikka came on board, he also had, very high pedigree, but we know what happened over the last 1 year. So are there systems in place to ensure that something like this does not repeat?
I think you should understand that it is not that Mr. Murthy ever, objected to the functioning of Mr. Sikka. I think Mr. Murthy was concerned really about a few events that really caused the whole issue, and he was very justified in being concerned about those issues, because he had a certain view of those issues, which were, of course, very recently basically put to rest. But I would say that I don't think Mr. Murthy expects to be consulted or in the way you are suggesting. I think, Nandan is there, at the helm. I think Mr. Murthy has full trust in Mr. Nilekani. And I think even you've seen Mr. Murthy's statement about Salil Parekh's appointment. I think, I don't think Salil has met Mr. Murthy as yet. But I think during the course of his, appointment and his taking over as CEO, he's bound to meet Mr. Murthy after he takes over, purely out of, respect for the founders. It's not just Mr. Murthy, he's going to meet other founders as well. So I don't think we should read that, read anything more into that.
Okay. No, basically it appeared that the founders were not on board with everything that the board and the CEO were doing. So I guess what Anuj is asking you is, are there new systems now to keep everyone on board with major decisions?
Well, I think there's been this particular process has been followed with great stringency and with very high levels of governance. And I think you will understand that, this was done in a very confidential way. And I was happy that there were no leaks into the media whilst this process went on.
Yes.
And I just think that, with having a, Nandan at the helm, makes it all the more important for me to mention that Salil Parekh will have a very good transition into his new role.
Okay. Well, actually, the leak, so-called leak in one of the channels, ultimately turned out to be wrong. But Kiran, were they? I'm sure there would have been internal candidates. I guess Mr. Rao, Praveen Rao was also a candidate. Do you think that Salil Parekh will be able to manage the top management? After all, they were also contenders for the position.
I'm not going to get into that aspect of, of course there were internal candidates, but I think, both the internal candidates and and Salil Parekh, I think, have a good understanding of the fact that it is the organization's interest that has to come first. And I think Salil Parekh has the maturity to deal with senior leadership. Praveen Rao is a very, very competent and capable leader. And he himself has welcomed Mr. Parekh's appointment. So I don't think we are going to see a huge disruption. I think Salil Parekh has the maturity and the experience to work well with the senior leadership team.
Mishra, morning. Has anything been decided? I know it's too early, but has anything been decided on what the structure of the compensation could be this time around? Because that was the big talking point earlier as well.
Yes, it has, and you will get to know about the compensation package, after he takes charge.
Okay.
Okay. Kiran, if you can stay in for 1 minute, we have lots of questions from Trastuzumab and Biocon's, performance. But we also have V. Balakrishnan, the former CFO of Infosys, with us. Bala, your own thoughts. So you were also very vocal about Vishal Sikka and various things that happened. Are you all now a happy lot with the new selection?
No, Salil seems to be a good choice because if you look at his pedigree of handling large markets like North America and Europe, especially financial services, and he comes from the services background, I think it seems to be a good choice. The earlier problem was Sikka was coming from a product company and his understanding of services was not that good. Now with Salil coming with the services background, I think it seems to be a very good choice.
Bala, good morning. That's interesting because performance-wise, under Vishal Sikka's tenure, actually things looked up for Infosys.
No, I think there are a lot of things happened during his tenure because especially the focus on the bread and butter services was missing. Okay. Because don't forget, there are $1 trillion being spent on services every year globally, and legacy business is not going to go away in a hurry. So you need to focus on that. Of course, new technologies you need to focus, but those all have a cycle time of 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
I think greater focus should be on bread and butter service.
Okay.
Salil coming from the background will be good.
All right. Bala, we will look forward to your comments as the days progress and things evolve. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And now for our stock of the morning, Biocon, a very big positive development and a huge milestone actually for Indian pharma companies itself. The US FDA has approved cancer drug Trastuzumab used to treat breast and metastatic stomach cancer. Well, Kiran, first of all, hearty congratulations. But before we get down to the hard facts, can you take us through the milestones with this US FDA approval?
Well, as you rightly said, it's a huge milestone for us and for the country because this is the first biosimilar Trastuzumab to be approved by US FDA, which is, of course, a very proud milestone for us. And more than anything else, it is a validation of our capabilities and our abilities to develop such a high-quality, complex biosimilar drug. And of course, as you know, there are just a handful of biosimilar players in the world, and it really helps us to join this league of players. I think in terms of milestones, all I can share with you is that this is a molecule that has been under development for 7 years. It's a very complex program. Huge investment has gone into this. Obviously, it was considered a very high-risk, high-reward game that we were playing. And I think we had very nervous shareholders and investors who felt that maybe this is a very risky path for a company in India. But I think we basically demonstrated to our investors that, we can do it. And I think, this is a big market opportunity for Biocon and Mylan. It is a $6 billion global opportunity. The U.S. itself has a $2.5 billion market at the moment. Europe has $1.5 billion. And the rest of the world has about $2 billion and growing. And this is a product that is a very life-saving product, and so much so that the WHO has actually included this as in its essential medicines list.
Sure.
So I think the prospects for growth, the prospects for Biocon and Mylan to provide affordable access to this very important drug is huge.
Yeah, no, I take that point, Kiran, and I think the markets reflected that. The Biocon stock, of course, has been a 2 or 3 bagger over the last 2-year period. But, the market would want to know some numbers. You spoke about the $6 billion overall market. In the US itself, with the kind of price erosion now and, the first year market share, first couple of year market share, what could be the number that we could look at? 50 million, 100 million for Biocon?
Well, Mylan is driving the commercial strategy for this drug in the U.S. and obviously they would like to, garner as much market share as they possibly can. And, we have a profit-sharing arrangement with them. We really believe that over the next few years, obviously, there is a ramp-up time. And obviously, it will mean that our share of the profit is going to be pretty good because we expect Mylan to do well with this drug. So I can't really at this point in time share the numbers, but we have indicated that over the next 3 years, 3 fiscals, we do expect, a large contribution from biosimilars. And over the next 5 years, we certainly expect over $1 billion just to come from the contribution of biosimilars and the profit share to our business.
In fact, I was coming to that.
$1 billion over the next 2 years, you said?
5 years.
5 years, okay. Fine.
So $1 billion over the next 5 years. What would your vision be in terms of, monetizing it, the business as a whole, perhaps maybe hiving it off, looking at, some kind of listing in the US, any stake sales?
So we have created a separate entity called Biocon Biologics. And we do intend to basically park all our biosimilar assets in this company. And at some stage in the near future, we do expect to list it to monetize the value.
Okay. Near future would mean what, Kiran? I mean, are you looking at it within the next 12 months?
No, not at all. I think it would be over a sort of a 3 to 4 year period.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Actually, more about the drug itself. What is the launch date? And is there a settlement with Roche that's already in place?
Well, Mylan has a settlement with Roche in place, and that's what brings about the certainty of market entry. I'm unable to disclose the actual launch date for confidentiality reasons.
Okay. Does this also open the door for, other biosimilars like pelfegrastim, etc.? Anything in the near future that we could look forward to?
Absolutely, because, if you remember, we got a complete response letter to pegfilgrastim. And it's the only, part of the complete response really pertained to our, the CAPA completion and CAPA updation in our files. And as you know, we just completed the CAPA, so we expect to submit all that data and hope that approval comes within a short term.
No, actually, the 8 observations in that March-April inspection was a bit rattling. Now the market doesn't have to worry about that, you think?
You know, I must tell you that there were two inspections. One
Yes.
was a pre-qualification inspection, which we thought we did very well with.
Okay.
But what gave us a surprise was the May inspection, which had which had 483s, which were, of concern.
Okay.
And those have been put to rest because we've got an EIR
Okay. All right.
from US FDA, and we've got a VAI classification for the EIR,
Okay.
which indicates that they are satisfied with the responses we've given. They're also now satisfied with the completion of the CAPAs. So hopefully that will see us in a different light.
I understand other companies like Pfizer have also filed for drugs similar to Trastuzumab.
Yes.
You don't expect that to, I mean, you said 1 billion in 5 years. Will the market face too much of competition for to get disturbed?
I talked about 1 billion from our biosimilars business.
Okay,
I didn't
okay.
just talk about one molecule.
All right. Sorry.
But what I do want to say is that I think we do expect a few more to be approved. I think Pfizer being one of them.
Okay.
And there are likely to be two others. As you know, Merck Biopis has also got approval in the US, in Europe. So we expect them to be following closely on our heels in the US. But having said that, having a few players is not like the generics market, which has multiple players.
Okay.
And we expect that for the next 5 years, the market for biosimilars is not going to be overly crowded.
Oh.
Okay.
So it allows us to basically have a very good, position in the market.
All right.
Okay, so Roche is also awaiting an approval for the combination of Herceptin and Perjeta in breast cancer, right? If I'm not wrong. So if
What's
Roche is also awaiting some approval. So if that nod comes through, could that limit the penetration in biosimilars?
I don't believe so, because I think there is a huge market for Herceptin on its own.
Okay. Now I guess the approval from the European drug regulator won't be such a big problem. What is the European market, the size?
1.5 billion at the moment.
Okay.
And I do believe that with the biosimilars coming in, this market will only expand. And also, I think you've heard that our dossier was accepted for review by EMA when we resubmitted the dossier, and they've clearly told us that they are reviewing it, and the re-inspection will also take place, and we hope to get approval soon after.
Okay. Well, finally, Kiran, you have around 6 to 8 drugs in line with Mylan for biosimilars, don't you? What are the others in the pipeline, and any timetable at all for their, getting approval and coming to the market?
So Glargine is also being reviewed by both US FDA and EMA at the moment.
Okay.
We have a bevacizumab under phase 3 trials. And we have, other products in the preclinical stage, which we expect to get into the clinic very fast.
Okay. So we are looking at what, a year's timetable for these things to start rolling out, or 2 years? What stage are they?
Well, certainly, pegfilgrastim and trastuzumab certainly have a very near-term entry.
Yes.
The others will probably follow soon after.
Okay.
All right, Kiran, we leave it at that. Thank you for giving us all those details and all the
many
best ones
congratulations
again.
yet again for a victory which I guess is not just for Biocon but for the Indian pharma sector. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's going to be the big stock of the day,
absolutely,
right? Apart from Infosys, of course.
Already 525, I mean, the kind of price targets that are coming in are huge.